Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the Communal Table podcast, part of Food and Wine Pro. I'm your host, Kat Kinsman, and really excited about my guest today. And I don't know, I'm trying to remember the order of events, if I met him first or if I met his food first, but they are just beautiful and good and exciting and lovely and all of these kind of things. I know it's weird to conflate somebody with their food, but I had a meal that really looms very large in my psyche. Welcome to Akhtar Nawab.
Hey, how are you?
I am. So there was a meal that I had at Alta that I was in the thick of really not being able to eat a whole lot of things.
Yeah, I remember.
And actually, I feel really incredibly guilty about going to your restaurant because I was like, I don't want to have you compromise your vision. I'd heard about you for such a long time and how much other chefs respect you. And I was like, I'm not going to be that person who goes in there, oh, I can't have this and this and this. And you made it so easy for me. And I really appreciate that.
I understand people have challenges or they have things they do want to eat or don't want to eat or steer away from. And kind of one of the beauties about, I think, Mexican food is it's very versatile. Mm-hmm. So we can really do a lot of different things, whether it's vegan or vegetarian or gluten-free, whatever it may be.
I'm really glad to say I've gotten delivery from your place a lot of times.
Awesome.
It travels really well, which I am thrilled about.
Michael sticks a nice cute note in there too.
Oh.
A little thanks for ordering caviar delivery from us.
Would you tell people who Michael is?
He's my business partner, Michael Weatherby.
Okay. Yeah. And we're going to talk about partnerships later because it's just very much on my mind this week. Or let's do it now because, this is a significant week in partnerships in New York City with a, pretty... notable split up between Daniel Hum and Will Guidara. Yeah, so they're splitting up the empire, not even splitting up, but Daniel is buying Will out.
I heard about it.
Yeah, and all the articles that were written about that were written about like this being an era of New York City dining based so much on this front and back of house partnership. And I've seen a lot of those throughout, New York City dining.
Right.
And how did you come together with your partner?
Yeah, we were consulting on a project. Backing up even further, we're
how do you know each other?
We're really kind of the same. We're close to the same age. We had both had people we knew in common and we knew of each other, but we really didn't meet in person until we were consulting on a project together. And I don't know, we just got along very well, and I think that, at this point in his life, he seemed pretty aligned with where I was in my life. Mm-hmm. And I think for partnerships, it's really important that everyone enters on the same kind of level playing field. And I found that in my career so far that I haven't always made the right choices with that, but I haven't actually known what to look for, I think, is really what it is, because it really is business. And apart from the fact that, we're going to be working so intimately together, it really is a business decision that has to come first. And, chefs aren't always educated about that business world, and it becomes really challenging, I think, to know what to ask yourself. But I do things a little differently now, and I think, like, I met his wife and I met his kids, and that becomes more like, how is he as a family person, right, or how is he outside of what we need? How is he going to behave? And I think that made it more impactful.
I had a restaurant lawyer, Jasmine Moy, on the show.
I know her.
Oh, she's so excellent.
I know her very well.
Yeah, and she's super smart cookie, and I've seen her be a person who has to undo a lot of knots in relationships when it hadn't been spelled out from the beginning, and that's where people get into trouble. They don't sit down and have that really tough conversation at the beginning.
That's right.
Can you talk about those tough things that you have to get out of the way up front?
Well, I think it really, for me, it's going back to the beginning and saying, are we going to work the same amount of hours? Are we going to be as equally invested in this opportunity? Is this person looking to grow this, or is he just or whoever the person may be?
Yeah.
In this case, was he going to enter this thing with the same attitude? Does he want to grow it? Is he interested in just this one restaurant?
Right.
All of these different things, I think, just like having the conversation, like, are you going to have kids? You're not going to have kids. What is it going to be?
Yeah.
I think that over time I learned a little more about how best to kind of have that conversation thoughtfully and honestly.
Yeah, you have to have a plan for growth and both have those same kind of expectations.
If that's what you want, sometimes it's just one restaurant.
And it is, I mean, it's a marriage.
Or whatever. Yes, correct. He says it more than I do. It is true, though.
Yeah.
It is very true.
You probably actually spend more time with him than...
His wife actually calls me his work wife.
Yeah, I have a work wife.
And we do spend a lot, we talk multiple times a day.
Yeah.
As we've gotten busier with more projects, it really is a constant communication.
And you have such a fascinating career. So let's talk through it because you have been in food in a lot of different kinds of ways.
Right.
I love to look at you were a place that I tend to think of as a crucible of New York City dining. You were a craft in the early days.
That's right.
Can we talk about that particular? Yeah. I'm thinking of that lineup there. All the people, including Stephen Solomon, who I always
Steve, yeah.
Yeah,
Gramercy too, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But it's Tom Colicchio, and
Yeah.
I think Marco Canora is part of this too. And
there was a whole roster of people for sure.
David Chang.
Yeah, Marco. David, Damon.
Yeah, Damon Wise, for people who don't know him, he's extraordinary.
He's an underrated chef, but
I absolutely agree. I wish more people knew.
I think he'll get his moment. He's a great cook.
Is he in Philly now?
He's in Atlanta right now.
Atlanta, right. Yes.
He's an amazing chef.
Yeah.
I mean, hands down, one of the best cooks I've ever worked with or seen in my life.
Damon, please come on the show.
Yeah.
I think he had a stint at Monkey Bar, maybe.
He did.
Yeah.
I remember he did.
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll get here one day and get on the show and everyone will know who he is.
Yeah, I tend to think of this whole lineup at sort of early craft and early Gramercy too. Actually, sorry, I was conflating like Stephen Solomon with that,
honestly,
but because it traded people so much.
Karen DeMasco gets left out. She's an amazing pastry chef, and
Yeah.
she's amazing. Like the stuff she was doing was amazing. Who else was there? And this kid Dan Sauer. He runs a place out Martha's Vineyard. He knew Marco for many years.
Was it Kwame Onwuachi was there?
Liz Benno and Jonathan Benno.
Yeah, extraordinary.
That was really the core group, and then of course Chef Colicchio.
Is this late '90s? When is this?
It was late '90s. Yeah, I think that's early 2000. I think.
So.
Early 2000s.
It's such an interesting thing when those people who came out of that, and these are big influential names. They talk about you as a chef.
Well, that's always nice.
I think of you as a chef's chef in the way that Marco Canora is a chef's chef.
I think that one thing we learn working at places like Craft or Gramercy is craftsmanship, and I think that not all chefs are able to teach that to all their employees in a way that's still artful and meaningful and thoughtful and, honest, treating ingredients with integrity. All of those things, I think, those disciplines, got filtered into us in a pretty direct way. And I think it forces people to say, like, I know Marco's an excellent cook, hands down. Great. He's great. Or David understands these flavors. He can put these things together in a really cool, interesting, awesome, unique way. For myself, I think I've always been a little bit more fidgety and have a hard time sitting still.
I get that. I've got ADHD.
I have a really tough time sitting still, and after craft and those kinds of things, I wanted a little more complexity. I'm not sure what direction I wanted to navigate necessarily, but after craft, I just kind of was like, maybe I want to go do my own restaurant, and as a lot of young chefs kind of do, and I was wholly unprepared for that.
You can learn by seeing only so much, and it's not till you get into the weeds of it you're like, oh geez,
Well, I think you realize that the way Craft and Gramercy and some of those other restaurants function are a product of a massive infrastructure that small restaurants don't have.
Yes.
And I was opening a restaurant for under $1 million, and it's not enough money
No.
in New York. It's just not enough.
It takes massive amounts just to even get into a space to attract other investors. You need money to attract money.
It was like I said, wholly unprepared in every capacity, emotionally, financially, professionally.
How old were you at the time?
32, 31.
Okay, yeah, I think
it was 31.
And if you're doing that and you don't have the backing of a group or a really rich family member or something like that, that's incredibly tough.
But even beyond the money, it's I wasn't emotionally ready for it.
Yeah. What did that look like? So when you say that, what does that mean?
I think I wasn't motivated by, in my opinion, now looking back on it after so many years, I wasn't really looking at it from, I think, a healthy perspective. It was really motivated by kind of other things.
Mm-hmm. Do you want, is it fame?
Accolades and notoriety and all those other things, I think, were motivational factors back then. And it wasn't the right way to do it.
Yeah.
I wanted to cook and be recognized for it.
Yeah.
At that time, and now I cook and there's a freedom to it that I haven't ever really had before. So it's changed so much over the years.
So you opened this restaurant and then maybe it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And so what did that feel like then? Like how long did it last? And then what was the process of undoing and then recovery from that?
I mean, 10 plus years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it's very impactful, life change, home life change.
It's a lot at once. And people, here's the thing, people don't teach chefs how to process while they're at work and then shut that off after. It's a different modality of that.
You are so kind of intertwined with it all blends together. Like there's creative and everything's just in this funnel.
Yeah.
And when you kind of try to filter it apart, it's really difficult at the end of the night. So you go back the next day and you try again.
Yeah.
And it becomes this pattern where you just keep on going until you realize it's not going the right direction. And how do you stop and how do you reverse and do it over again? For me, it was really after the restaurant closed, I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I met a friend, his name's Yakov. He's he's friends. He's actually the most interested food guy I know. And he's not in food. And he just loves
people.
It. Yeah, exactly.
They keep restaurants open. It's great.
He goes to Marco's restaurant. He goes to Chang's restaurant. He goes everywhere. Mm-hmm. And I met him. He was working for, as a lawyer by trade, but really he's a creative type. Mm-hmm. But he does this lawyer stuff for a living at the time.
To pay for meals.
Pretty much. I mean, he was traveling all over the world. And I met him in Midtown. And I was like, man, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm done. And then he's like, you need a break. Mm-hmm. And he's like, and at the time, I was kind of like, I don't know what difference it's going to make. I don't think I want to go back and do it again.
Yeah, it's a masochistic thing to do.
To just be completely crushed.
Yeah.
After the restaurant closed, and that was how I identified myself.
Yeah. Yes.
I was this thing I was kind of the personification of this thing, whereas it should have been this thing is a product of what I want to do. Mm-hmm. It was reversed. And I think that when we work as creatively and passionately as we do, mm-hmm. and you can't separate it, it becomes really difficult to try to peel it apart and say, this is really who I am, not this.
Yeah.
The restaurant isn't me. It's a product and it's an idea. And it definitely is something we're creating and has its own soul. But at the end of the day, it's if you're not able to function as a person, mm-hmm. It's just like in a relationship. If you're not a functional person, you really can't be in one. You have to be open to it.
I always think with relationships, I've been, knock on this table. solid marriage, all the, all the stuff, and, we put the work into it. That wouldn't have happened if we each hadn't, taken time to be single and figure out like who we were individually outside of relationships before we got together.
Right.
And I find this especially with chefs because you do identify so much with that. And the product that you make, it gets erased every night.
Right.
Every single day is a new thing.
Well, the repetition of cooking is one of the things I love most about it.
Yeah.
Is the fact that we can go in there and try again, do it better, and get it to as close to where we love it as we can. And, I steer away from other things, like where people may say, hey, that was perfect, or hey, that was perfect taco. And for me, it's a taco these days. You know what I mean? Like, but for me, it's just for me, it's just like, let's just try to do it better every day.
Yeah.
Let's try to please as many people as we can. Let's be as creative as we can, and let's have fun, and know that at the end of the day, we can still start over again. It becomes a little more empowering, I think, than it was at the end of the day 10 years ago, where it's like, it's the end of the day, you totally failed.
Yeah.
And that's what we used to look at it like. It was a failure, like, I was seeing a therapist for a long time. He's like, you should hear how you talk about yourself.
It's hard.
He used to say, it sounds like you hate yourself.
Yeah. And you probably wouldn't say those things about or to anyone else. They always say like, I think of the language I use when I'm mad at myself. And I was like, I would never say that to somebody I care about or even somebody I didn't.
Right.
It's really, but if nobody teaches you how to be kind to yourself, it's really hard to learn later.
I think in my case, it was later. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about how you try to transmit the notion or how you were feeling at the time about what perfect looks like. Because like I've had Dave on the show,
sure,
and we talked through, he's had to learn some really intense lessons about sort of how he deals with people, because he told me a story about how he was, in, open kitchen once, I think
sure,
it must have been at Co, and, excoriating somebody for having done something wrong, and seeing a review where somebody said like, technically the meal was great and all these things were, but I was taken out of the moment and I ended up feeling so tense because Dave was yelling at somebody and he realized like, oh my God, I'm the problem, and having to relearn how to communicate perfection or his ideal of perfection to somebody else. So how have you sort of learned to do that and relearned how to do that? Because a restaurant isn't just you in the kitchen.
I think cooking a different cuisine and forcing myself to kind of go back to learning something new was very humbling.
Yeah.
I think it pushed me in a uniquely different direction.
Yeah, so what kind of food was it you were doing, and then what did you move to?
Right, so, Elettaria was an Indian-inspired, European kind of focused cooking restaurant. And it had like real intensity to it.
Yeah.
But it also took, enormous energy to kind of complete everything every day. And the list got bigger and bigger as the days grew, because I was like, all these things need to be better. And the staff who was working for me, were very loyal, and they had all been with me for many years at that point. But man, I used to let them have it.
Yeah.
Like crazy. And every day. And I think they used to joke a little bit about it, just because like I would go in there and yell at everyone every day. And I had my first ulcer when I was at Craft Bar, and that was when I was 28 years old.
28-year-old should not be having stress ulcers.
I was feeling nauseous for like weeks, and I went to the doctor. He's like, it got diagnosed with an ulcer. That's at a young age, and this is over food. You know what I mean? But it's really over the fact that you have this idea of what it needs to be, and if it's not met, it's everything wrong. Like whether it's, diced onions. I used to yell at people for diced onions constantly, or something more complex like an emulsified, vinaigrette or sauce or whatever it may be. And I used to just, go insanely crazy, And I think, now I look back on it and I'm just like, I don't do that anymore.
That's the thing is like all these people who you mentioned who you were with, I have talked to a lot of them about how they have changed over the years. Marco, when I first met him, he was an angry dude.
Yeah.
He was a super angry, yelly dude, and he owns it now. And you talk to him now, and he's Mr. Zen guy. I've seen Dave transform tremendously throughout the ages because he was the epitome of the screaming, belittling chef, and I've seen him take so much ownership of that and do so much sort of therapy and work and realizing he could change how he communicates with people. I've seen Tom become Mr. yoga and boxing dude and and I think there were a lot of people who didn't survive that era.
Right.
And to the point where they died. You're getting ulcers. People died in pursuit of food. That blows my mind.
It's when I think, I don't know, I would look at it and say, when someone looks at whatever you're doing and you think that is you, and
you are this plate of onions.
Right. You're disrespecting everything we do here, me, my ideals, my mantra, whatever it may be. You're disrespecting all of this. And it's unacceptable, It's really difficult. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I think for David, for example, he had it particularly tough because he had so many eyes on him.
Absolutely.
And it's a little different for me who had some eyes on me, New York eyes, but David had a global kind of.
I can't imagine that pressure.
That is so stressful.
Seriously,
and I know he was so stressed for so many years that now I talk to him and he's a happy parent.
Yeah, it's been a joy seeing his evolution of especially in the
great.
Since the birth of his kid and again really putting in that kind of work, and I hope I figure it's okay to talk about this because he has talked about it publicly and stuff, but he's somebody who, you're absolutely right, that level of scrutiny. I mean, I get to, for the most part, hide and do my job, and the times when I do have to be in public, I feel like I have to sort of extra turn it on and and do the things. But I also don't have people attempting to Instagram every little thing I do. I mean that's a pressure that has come along in the time that you've been doing this, where people can in the moment Instagram something you do, they can Yelp something that you do. So there before it was sort of pressures of diners coming in, maybe they talk on Chowhound or something like that.
Exactly, yeah, e-gullet, things like
yes,
like
e-gullet,
that. Yeah.
absolutely. All of these things. I think I started back on Chowhound in 97 or 8 or something like that.
People used to read the forums, yeah.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And e-gullet, and then the all those sort of things that came out of that, this online community. But that was just us being nerds back then, and now it's kind of everybody. But we moved into this moment of immediate feedback.
Right. No, for sure. Yeah.
And that's I can't imagine the pressure of that.
It's I think I've gotten a lot more used it growing older, I think, and having it happen so many times in so many levels. There was a time where I think I was reviewed more than almost anyone I know, just because I had different positions, whether it was EU or a craft bar or the second craft bar or my own restaurant. And that was all within a very kind of short time period, and I was just getting reviewed constantly, and it was driving me crazy. And it was anything negative would drive me crazy, or if it was a review I didn't want. It was really impactful in a terribly unhealthy way. And Elettaria was one of the examples. I got a review that Frank Bruni wrote, and I couldn't have disagreed with it more back then. And that was a time, I think, where the New York Times reviews were particularly impactful.
Yeah, and especially before there was so much sort of other commentary from.
There was no Instagram back then. There was plenty of Yelp and things like that. I remember. I think so. But
it's all a blur.
yeah. The reviews were meaningful.
Yeah.
I just like after I got the review, I was just like so unhappy.
Yeah.
For so long. I literally left and went fishing. I was like, told everyone, it's like, I'm going fishing in Martha's Vineyard. Mm-hmm. And I left and went fishing for like a week.
Yes. I mean, you had to.
I was miserable, and I was miserable to everybody. And I don't think I looked at it later until when the staff was looking to me for guidance through this.
Yeah.
And all I could do was really think about how miserable I was.
Yeah.
Like just faced with like just this in front of you, it seems like you can't get around it.
How did you?
Time, I guess, more than anything.
Yeah.
I think I tried to reestablish like a relationship with my daughter that really hadn't existed really kind of meaningfully at that point, because I just spent all the time working.
Yeah.
And honestly, I found that I'm a good parent.
Yeah. How old is she now?
She's 13 now.
Oh, wow.
No.
Yeah.
And I found that
That's
that
an
was
intense age.
Yeah, it was like, maybe I'm a parent first.
It's
and that's really, I think, what it became. Like I am more than like this plate of onions or whatever it is. Like I'm more.
You're the human too.
Right.
So I've talked with a lot of chefs and actually a lot of dads about that. Jason Vincent came on the podcast and he was saying, like, after he was a Best New Chef, he had to take 2 years off because of the pressures of it, and he was not okay. And he was a full-time parent for a couple of years.
I get it.
Yeah, and
100% I get it.
So
I was out for 7 months.
Yeah.
And I felt down and out. Like,
so did you ever think you were going to walk back into a kitchen?
I didn't want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
I felt retired like 100%.
At age
33.
Yeah, that's early to call, but if that's the only thing you've ever done in that
I didn't know what else to do. Like I was like, I can't do anything else.
Yeah.
Like it's the only thing I've ever pursued.
Yeah.
Because I loved it. So getting past that seemed impossible.
So what does the day-to-day look like during that? Because I know that I've definitely had times when I have,
During that period?
Yeah, I've had times when I've over-identified with a job, and then when that thing
heavy drinking
isn't there. Yeah, I mean...
Heavy.
Yeah.
Like drank a lot.
Mm-hmm. Did you see people?
Not that much, really. Mm-hmm. Honestly, like a lot of it was just wallowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like at first, like just kind of forget about everything because alcohol tends to make you do that.
Yeah.
But much later, it becomes 10 times heavier.
Yeah. You're just shoving that in the corner and you're compressing it.
Yeah, exactly. Until it got like explosive, it felt like. But there was a lot of drinking. I did start seeing a therapist around then, and
that's hard for chefs. It seems like just from talking to chefs a lot, like because mental health. It's changing so much, especially over the last few years. Right. But it seemed like a taboo for such a long time. It's not like
no
you're going to... Yeah, you're not going to be saying to, like, another chef, like, hey, I'm going to see my therapist. And now I think people are a lot more, but it was definitely like, just man up. Right. People had that sort of terrible language around it.
Right. That day-to-day was really, really kind of... It all seemed like one day, like one long day.
I get
Every
that.
day was kind of the same. Like
had those spirals.
The only pursuit was to try to forget about what was going on and maybe get out of town here and there. And
so, what's the thing that, because that there are only a few ways out of that. And
right. Well, honestly, it was spending time with my daughter forced me to be, I think, a little more present all the time.
What were you two doing? Like pick her up from school?
Just like take her to school. She had kind of short days back then.
Yeah.
So I'd pick her up. And then eventually she was with me a couple of days a week, and with her mom a few other days of the week, and then it turned into something I looked forward to, and then now it's something kind of can't live without.
Yeah, yeah. And 13's such a critical age to be seen by an adult who is going to tell you, "Hey, it's going to be okay."
I gotta be honest. Like I look at her and I'm saying, it's like one of the most interesting people I've ever met.
That's awesome. Like that's a really cool thing to be able to like say.
She totally unique kid.
What does she love to do? What makes her happy?
Dance, ballet, flamenco. You know, she's really into it. But really, she's funny and she's sarcastic. She's smart and she loves to read, and it's just like a very interesting person, you know.
So when you started thinking about going back into food and restaurants, like how old was she at that point?
She was 3.5 or 4.
Okay, so she's not having much of an opinion about if you're going back to restaurants or not.
Not at that age. Okay. You know, when I opened Alta Calidad, I had been doing a lot of daytime work because that's really the kind of work I picked up.
Yeah.
So I could be with her,
yeah.
You know, and not sacrifice all those nights away. I asked her, I was like, hey, listen, I kind of want to open this restaurant. Is that okay with you? And she said yes, you know. She's like, does it mean you're going to be gone a lot? And I was like, well, for the first few months, yes. But this is a small place, and it's not something huge, you know. And she's like, okay.
That's really lovely. I mean, that seems healthy. And let's talk about the stuff that you were doing in that middle time too, because you started some really cool things, and I see chefs sort of diversifying more of what it is they're doing, and some of them have an identity crisis during that because they're thinking, if I'm not on the line, I'm not doing this, I'm not a chef.
Right.
But they absolutely are. So let's talk about the things you were doing.
I think at around that time I started kind of redefining a little bit about what I could do and what I wanted to do. When I got back to cooking after Elettaria, after like 7 months or so away, I just went back and I said, I want to do something different.
Yeah.
I want to do something less intense, and I want to do something that has an equal amount of soul to what I would have characterized great cooking to be. And I want it to be rustic, and I don't want to have 3 people making this puree and putting it on a plate. I just don't want that anymore.
Yeah.
And I said that. I was really open about it. It's like, I can't manage that anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I just can't. I don't feel healthy. I really think I really felt like I can't do it, you know. So I said, let me seek out something else. And like Mexican kind of presented itself. I knew nothing about it. And it felt great because there was like this openness or this kind of newness to it that felt special.
Had it been just a cuisine that you really liked?
Sure, that was it. And I was just like, I'm learning again. It's fun again. It's like, this is good for me.
That's, you know, I don't hear chefs say it's good for me very often because you're not taught to think that that is something you're even allowed to consider.
Right. It's funny, you know, I just finished my first cookbook.
Congratulations.
Thanks. And it's called Good for You. And
oh, that makes me so happy.
I wrote it with Andrea.
Andrea
Strong.
Okay. Oh, God, a marvelous human. She's so talented
great, and
great.
She's known me my entire cooking career.
Okay.
Like since Craft Bar.
Yeah.
All the way through.
Yeah, and she's been writing that whole time.
She's been writing the whole time. Very experienced, and we know each other.
Yeah.
And so the book is called Good for You, and it's because it's like, let's stop and rethink this.
Yeah.
You know, like, how do you take care of yourself?
Well, you were doing, like, let's talk about the business also. So it's Fresh, totally blanking on the name of it. The
Indie Fresh?
Indie Fresh, sorry,
Yeah.
yes. Indie Fresh. Let's talk about Indie Fresh and, like, what that looks like.
So Indie Fresh started with a good friend of mine who, he's a fitness persona, and he's very kind of plugged into the fitness world. And he was running Juice Press for many years as they were kind of tearing through their expansion. But I don't know that he wanted food involved somehow in his life because he loves to eat. And so we decided to start Indie Fresh, which was like a gluten-free, dairy-free concept. And at first, you know, I was kind of taking cues from him because he's so plugged into this fitness world. And then I said, you know, we got to make it for more than just fitness people.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't work. At least for me, because I'm not like, I love to work out, and I love working out with him whenever we do at this point. But, I'm not that person,
Yeah.
like I'm not going to spend all day, training people and working out. So we made it so that it could work for everybody. And a lot of the recipes in the book, for example, are things that we made there. So like lasagna, like how do you clean that up? It was a daytime concept. It was designed for grab and go, and it got my mind, again, just like Mexican food, it got me moving in new directions and thinking and reading, and all those things are like, that's what I like. Like I used to spend countless hours at the bookstore when people used to read, books at bookstores.
Right.
And I used to just grab books off the shelf and like page through Michel Brault books or Charlie Trotter books. Yeah. And this is the old days when, Charlie Trotter was alive. He was putting out all these books and they were beautiful and no one was doing it like that. And so, Daniel Boulud's books and things like that when I was in San Francisco. And that to me was like, that was learning. That's how we used to learn.
Yo, absolutely. I mean, I love seeing like chefs' cookbook collections. It's always such a joy.
No, it's pretty interesting because we have, I have, obviously, just like most chefs, I know a massive collection.
Yeah, and it's funny also the way that chefs use it too, because it's like sort of for inspiration, because it's not like you're going to use the same recipes, or you might be inspired by those Michel Brault books. Like I have one, and it's just the most beautiful thing in the world, but it goes straight into my eyes.
yeah. I never I took one thing away from that book in particular, and that was he does this thing called an aigo bolito, which is like if I don't pronounce it right, but it's like a butter emulsion, and then he steeps like all these things in there, like leeks and peppercorns and garlic, and makes a super flavorful butter, and he uses it for everything.
Yeah,
it's just like a little bit on everything. I'm like, man, that's amazing, and it adds so much flavor, and I still use it to this day.
Yeah, and to have those sort of things in your canon that you use, and nobody will be able to ever be able to sort of identify, like, what is that thing? I'm always
it makes you unique.
Yeah,
it does.
I'm always so interested when there are just a few chefs who I can try their food. I could have it blindfolded out, and I could tell you who cooked that thing because of their particular.
No, I believe you. There are some people in particular I could say that with for sure.
Yeah, not a lot of them, but I sort of appreciate that thing because it puts everything sort of in the same kind of key, and you can be singing a lot of different songs with it, but have all that same kind of key.
Right.
So I'm so interested when chefs sort of delve into health, because I know that I look back a lot at Heartbeat with Michel Nichon's restaurant, that he's a fantastic chef and stuff, but I think people balked at the notion of having like health involved, and he's still doing health, but he's not sort of like touting it like straight up front. But it gets a little, people get a little nervous about, sort of chefs and doing that kind of stuff. Like, oh, is this just going to taste like kale and sand or something like that? Right. But I've seen Rocco DiSpirito do it in a really, really smart way. I just had a great conversation with him about what he's doing at Standard Grill, and and taking all of those things and putting sort of health forward in it. And so you were able to do that in a really successful way.
So, I was a really overweight kid. Most people don't recognize it in that way, but, I was like almost 250 pounds when I was younger. And so I saw a nutritionist at a pretty young age. And I actually got but it was an old school nutritionist, like, poached chicken and things like old school. Like the diet was calorie restrictive, flavor restrictive.
Yeah.
But that's how you lost weight back then.
Just feels like punishment. And you, like me, are from Kentucky, I believe.
Yeah, I'm from Louisville, Kentucky.
I'm from Fort Thomas. Yeah, so it's
you can imagine what we ate then.
Yeah, exactly. Steamed rice, steamed chicken.
Totally, that's it.
All that kind of stuff. And
all measured out.
And do you feel like that formed your notion of what sort of nutrition was as an adult, or did you have to relearn that kind of thing?
It gave me a discipline I think I didn't know I had in me, because it takes a lot of discipline to lose weight. At that age in particular, it took a lot of discipline. But it gave me a base understanding, I think, of nutrition. I would never claim to be a nutritionist in any capacity. It gave me a base fundamental understanding of how it works for me, more than anything. Over time, I think we learned how to cook and incorporate flavors into this healthy cooking, I think that has worked well for me. And that's part of the reason why I think Indie Fresh was created, was that so we could reach a broader audience, and get people to understand that it can be, you can have risotto. Yeah, maybe it doesn't have, chips of butter in there and it has something else. Or, yes, you can have, roasted chicken, but, let's find a way to get some of that grease out of there. Things like that, But those things all work still,
Well, can we talk about how you then, after having to have the sort of the restrictions and the no flavor and stuff, reteach yourself that food is allowed to be associated with pleasure instead of punishment?
It's true. I mean, there was fortunately, the nutritionists found later that you can eat a whole egg, because I got to be honest, just the steamed egg whites were painful every day.
Yeah.
And it really was punishment. And I think it made me feel almost terrible as a person for being overweight at that age.
I think a lot of diet culture is like that, though.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, fortunately, there's such a strong movement, not just with chefs, but with others as well, in creating interesting, delicious foods that you can eat in moderation, that still allow you to achieve the ideal weight or body or whatever it is you're looking for.
Yeah. And still get flavor, too.
Exactly.
You're allowed to be joyful when you're eating.
Exactly. I mean, listen, there's so much technology now that allows you to maximize flavor, whether it's a sous vide machine at home or whether it's all these different tools you can buy at home. Breville makes so much stuff that works for a home cook that allows you to achieve so much more flavor, I think, than what you could do in the past.
Can we talk about going back into a kitchen? Because you had been, what was the time between being in kitchens?
About 7 months.
Okay. And you say you have you're not that screaming guy anymore.
No.
How did you set up, how did you relearn how to be in the kitchen?
I think because I was the only one who really didn't speak Spanish in this Mexican kitchen. I was the person who was totally new. And I was the one who knew nothing compared to everyone else. Yeah. And the only thing I really knew how to do was manage and kind of deliver on things like food costs and things like that. I understood how those formulas work. But I was the new person, so I would be asking questions the whole day. And that's a very humbling position to be in. Yeah. But I think I just gained an understanding, and I was like, wow. I see a lot of comfortability in myself here because there's this Mexican thing, there's this Indian thing. They seem to be overlapping. Yeah. And I never knew that existed. So kind of when I delve a little deeper, I see, there was a lot of Arab influence in Mexico at one point. There was a lot of Jewish influence in parts of Mexico. And now you start seeing it in these spices that are always been so interesting to me in my cooking. To achieve tons of flavor and give new things an identity that maybe didn't have one in the past, whether it's turmeric or cumin, and they all seem to have their moment these days. But,
as health foods.
But it didn't really exist back then, so while Indians have been using it forever, maybe it hasn't been used in Mexican cooking before, maybe there's a place for it. So all of that became something that was felt new and really was like going back to school in so many ways. But I think I needed it. I really truly felt as though if I didn't do something different, there's no point in going back because I would just be going back to the same thing.
Yeah, and
I would just be returning to the same problems and the same unhappiness. And I'm a lot happier cooking what I do now. Granted, it's a little bit less than what it has been in the past just because of some other work, but it's really fun doing it now, and I have a lot more joy about it.
So, you opened up a place in New Orleans.
Yes,
recently.
We did. Yeah, 4 months ago.
That's congratulations. I haven't gotten to eat there. I've peeked in, and it's really beautiful. And it seems like it's the cornerstone of a big building. Is it a big residential building?
It is. Yeah.
I really think, and correct me if I'm wrong on these things, but it feels like there are the way that more restaurants are finding sustainability is to be the cornerstone of a hotel or residential building, is something like that. So can we get in slightly to the mechanics of that kind of thing?
Well, the economics of restaurants are unique.
Yeah,
Definitely. Typically, the restaurant world, most owners, like, they raise a chunk of money or they have a chunk of money. They invested into building this business, this restaurant, and they spend a ton of money. Unlike a lot of businesses, you have to spend all of your money almost, except for 10%, typically 10 to 20%. And after that, you start bringing in revenue, but you're still paying out a ton of money to vendors and staff and all these other payables you have. So it becomes a really difficult position to raise money when you tell people, well, I'm going to spend it all and then I'm going to make it back. And they're like, wait a minute, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But that's typically how restaurants function these days. I look at it and I say, what are we doing raising the money? Like, you developers are the one who have better access to this capital than us. So now we go to them and we say, why don't you do this for us and we'll run it, we'll manage it, and that will be a long-term partnership that you can guarantee on, because you've taken out kind of the biggest equation, which is risking your space and investment on an inexperienced business person, which would be someone like me.
Yeah.
So I think I recognize it, and we went to, this company in New Orleans approached me. We said no at first, and then they pursued it, and we said no again. And then they really pursued it, made it a little more compelling, and then I was like, it's not a bad deal. Like, I don't mind opening something in a city I want to go to. Like New Orleans is a place.
It's a great city.
Exactly. Like, it's a place I want to go. I look forward to it. It did put us in a difficult position as far as, finding staff for a different city, obviously, but we were very committed to it. And what we ended up opening is great. We love it down there,
So let's talk about what that looks like to have restaurants in different cities. I've seen, I've known a few people sort of who've negotiated that, and it's usually people who have a partnership who they sort of alternate who goes. Right. But I know that taking care of yourself has to be difficult while you are in various cities and as a parent and stuff. So can you tell me what that is like?
Taking care of yourself.
Like, while you're having to, be in different cities, having to, and also how you sort of take care of your business and take care of a couple different staffs when you're not the person who's always there. How do you manage this within your?
Well, there's a lot of trust that goes into opening a business out of. We're not a huge company. I want to be clear, like, for anyone who is listening, it's like, the company is really me, my business partner, and then we have a CFO, and then we have a general counsel, which is things we've added only after we've done, like, our fourth deal, and we're saying I can't write these agreements. I can barely read these agreements. I can. But we had to get other people involved in the process to take that away from us so that we could focus on what we do best, which is cooking and managing for me, operating and managing for my partner. So it required a lot of trust, and we ended up bringing someone on from Chicago who she had worked for Doug Saltis for a long time. I don't know if you remember that. Remember him? He used to be in New York for many years, but
I know the name.
He was. I think the restaurant was Country. He was in New York for years, then now he runs a division of Lettuce Entertaining in Chicago.
Okay, they are massive.
Yeah, massive company. And Esperanza has kind of a corporate experience, but she also has a Mexican background, and she has some Asian experience, and I was like, this is great. She checks a box for corporate. She is passionate about Mexican food, and she wants to work, and she's eager, and she's got an objective in her life, that she wants to achieve. having her own restaurant one day. So if I can help her do that, I'd love to. So she's really kind of the key of that restaurant. We rely on her very heavily for everything.
Yeah.
But really, we gave her an opportunity, and she's doing great.
So you said all these projects. What all projects do you have that you can talk about? Because
sure.
You've got an empire happening.
Well, empire sounds so negative, though, but I like to think we bring positivity and opportunities.
I like empire. You talk about the Danny Meyer empire. That's not a bad
true.
thing.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. We have this. So we have Alta Calidad in Brooklyn, which is operating. We have Otra in New Orleans. We just opened our fast casual version of Alta Calidad. It's Alta Calidad Taqueria.
Where?
It's in the new Time Out Market under the Brooklyn Bridge there.
Oh, I know what I'm doing this weekend.
So I had this idea in my head that we wanted to try these Indian rotis that we do at the restaurant, and they were special, I think, when you were there, but I don't think you were eating any gluten that night. But I feel like two of the other people at the table got it.
I got to see everything.
And it's like a giant Indian flatbread that has been treated with a French technique with Mexican ingredients. So we created 11. Yeah, I'll talk really quickly back because I kind of love it. But
yeah, please.
We started 11 about a year and a half ago, and that's our starter. It's like a sourdough starter. And so we used a percentage of that in bread flour, and we let it ferment overnight with yogurt and with olive oil, so lots of fat. And it's a really tender dough, and then we roll it out, and then we cut it like it's called a lacha paratha, which is like an Indian bread that's been cut into strips and re-rolled. But it's kind of a peasant way of achieving textures and flavor, textures and kind of an airiness to it without using additional fat because they didn't really have that. It was considered expensive. So they did it in the technique of rolling it. And it's really interesting because when it cooks, it steams and you see all these different layers within it. But it's a really grandmothery kind of peasant way to do it. So we do that. And it's tacos and rotis.
God, that sounds good.
And it's really fun. You can see them rolling it out all day long. And we have this fermented dough that sits there overnight. And then we cut them into 100-gram portions, and we roll it out. And we kind of do it in front of everyone, and it's just a fun thing.
That's so lovely. And you have a book.
Yeah, so I finished a book also. This is all pretty short and within a couple of years.
When's the book coming out?
I think 6-7 more months.
Okay, yeah.
It seems to take forever.
It really does.
I thought we'd be done with this thing like 7 months ago.
No, it drags and photography takes a long time. And
they were great. They were pretty quick, but
who's
it's really
putting it out?
Chronicle.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, we're excited about that. So, great publisher. We had a great editor. So.
Oh, who's your editor on this?
Her name's Cameron.
Okay.
I can't pronounce her last name, Subiya, I think, but she's been great. She's been great for us. And then I took my consulting business, which was pretty busy.
Yeah.
And I kind of merged it with my other business, the restaurant business. And that's part of why we brought on the CFO. So now I have all this experience in food halls. So we actually created a management company that now manages food halls also.
Oh God, that's so brilliant. Because every city I travel to is starting to get a food hall.
So we are a management company also, and we're opening our first food hall in Omaha, Nebraska.
Congratulations. Oh, I have a friend who lives in Omaha.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to send her over. Her name is Rainbow.
Okay.
And look for Rainbow.
Well, you should come too, but it opens in 2 months now.
What's it called?
It's called the Inner Rail Food Hall.
Oh, my gosh.
So we entered these deals as, a lot of this is just learned over time, but chefs don't really typically understand the real estate market, and I would never claim to. But what I do understand is that developers need help with the food component that they always want. So what we've said, what I've kind of gone out to do is I go and pitch our company and say that we can do this because we have a certain skill set, I think, that other people don't. One is that we operate from a food position as well as a beverage position, but we also manage on a top level. So we come in there as an asset manager for the ownership, or the land. Really, we're the landlord, but ownership. And we operate their food hall, and we curate the vendors, but we're also an advocate for the vendors because...
So important. Really,
what I found is in Omaha, for example, we have an Indian tandoor vendor who's not necessarily equipped to manage the business aspect. So we help him. And we say, I know you can do it. We just want you to cook the best things you can. Let us help you. And so we offer that to him, to make sure he succeeds.
So you're somewhat of an incubator as well.
Well, there's not a designated space for that. Although you could say that if this person leaves after his license agreement is up, maybe it was an incubated space.
I can't wait to see sort of what comes out of this.
Right. It's actually very exciting, and it's been a very creative process, which is why I think I've liked it. There's a lot of conversations and things I haven't done before, there's a salesmanship to it that it's not necessarily I'm not really a salesperson in any way. But my business partner is a little more equipped to talk about, I think, some of those things better than I am. What I can do is I go in there and tell them, I can help you make a successful restaurant if you listen and you work with us. And then I think it becomes a little bit easier.
While you're out there doing all this and you're on the road and you're pitching, how do you take care of yourself on the road, like through airports, through hotels? How do you do that?
I usually bring food.
Uh-huh.
I always bring almonds.
Yeah.
Or apples. I always stay at a hotel that has a gym. I don't stay at one that doesn't.
What's your sleep like?
On travel days, it's not enough.
I'm not good at it.
That's not
so
enough.
bad at it.
Usually I'll take a 6 a.m. flight out.
Yeah.
It's between 6 and 7.
Can you sleep on planes?
Never.
No, I can't either. I watch movies.
Yeah,
done.
usually it's that. Usually I'll just get my laptop out and I'll kind of chip away at whatever needs to happen. But it definitely becomes difficult. I make sure I don't drink, typically on planes, or if I'm away, I just keep it really limited.
FaceTime with daughter?
Always. But I try to only book these things on the days that she's with her mom.
Yeah.
So I'll try to not do anything on the days that we're, other than be here.
Yeah.
On the days. So that it kind of pushes my travel schedule between, Wednesday through Saturday night, pretty much.
How is the notion of what is perfect changed from the you that was, say, in that kitchen at Craft to what that looks like for you now?
I think it's less motivated by what others think, and it's really kind of predicated by what I think. So if I say, I think this is, honestly, at this point, it could be an enchilada with Brussels sprouts and this Indian-ish pasilla mole on a plate that has no connection with anything. To me, that could be perfect.
Yeah.
And it's that rusticity, and if I know someone did it with integrity and heart, it's good enough for me.
What would you tell that guy?
The old me?
Yeah. What would you tell that kid?
Yeah. I honestly, I would probably go back and say, there's more to you than this plate of food.
Yeah.
You're a dad, you're a bass player, you're, a person with your own ideas. It's not just you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's really important.
Yeah. Well, the great thing is you have cooks that you can say that to now and convey that.
I wanted to be a bass player. I wanted to be a musician my whole life. That's really all I've ever it's all I thought about doing before I kind of fell into cooking.
Have you ever met Chidi Kumar?
No.
She's spectacular. She's got a restaurant called Garland in Raleigh, and she is still in a band. Oh, really? She's the bass player in
Cool.
a band.
That's
so they have a
awesome.
combination restaurant and music space.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So she's
that might be my dream. Then.
When I hear that, I overheard somebody saying Chidi's doing this event, and somebody asking, actually, is she playing or is she cooking? And I think she was doing both, actually. But she's going to be in town doing a Brown in the South dinner at James Beard, and
that's awesome. Yeah,
it is my mission.
We're trying to get involved for next next year for Ottervest.
I want the the bass playing chefs to meet.
I would love to.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like you have a, sort of a similar like bass playing spirit. I think in this.
It's I don't know. It's really I would say it's definitely sculpted part of my life.
Yeah.
It has definitely.
Oh, I love that. Here's our little Oprah moment that we always have, because I really think that I've come to learn, like, I used to be embarrassed about wanting things and thinking like, no, that's for other people or whatever. So I, as an interviewer, it's easy to get away with not answering this question for yourself. So what is the thing that you want, that the universe, that you can speak into the universe, even if you feel like a giant dork saying it? What is the thing that you want that's is just a thing for you?
I would probably say it would while it should be for me, it would end up being for my daughter. Like, I hope she gets everything she wants.
That's pretty great. I love that. And now we have the speed round of questions that has evolved.
That's easier. Yeah, the daughter stuff's always the most emotional for me.
You know what? I love hearing you talk about her. Like, and again, that age, that 13, I remember how tough that was for me. And my grandniece just turned 13, and I was like, I just want to swaddle her away from the world and like send her books.
It's a unique experience. I'm feel very fortunate. I kind of woke up and got it.
Oh my God, you two are really lucky to have each other. What's her name? If you feel
Ella.
like it's Ella. Ella, you got a great dad. I don't know. It just makes me really happy because I know
That's awesome. Thank you.
How important it is to be taken seriously.
No, it is.
It's a really big thing. So, have you ever cried in the walk-in?
No.
Yeah. Have you ever had an emotional experience in the walk-in?
Yes.
What's your walk-in? What is your particular walk-in therapy?
I brought the guys actually tease me about it now. I guess every time I used to really get upset at someone, I used to take them in the walk-in. I never realized this, but I hear about it when I used to go to like Dan or Josh or Pat or Joanna or Jessica or any of these people that used to work for me. Anytime I was upset, apparently I would say, "Come here." And I guess I would let him have it, and I guess it was the equivalent of going to the principal's office.
Oh no!
I had no idea though. I had no idea, but I guess now I think about it, I guess that's right.
Oh shoot! So other people have cried in the walk-in because of it.
Perhaps. Oh,
what's your comfort food?
Indian food. It would be, in particular, it'd be my mom's rice and lentils. Mm-hmm. It would be this lamb thing that she makes called grail, which is like a slow-cooked lamb shoulder on tons of bones, lots of yogurt, lots of black peppercorns, lots of spices, and she cooks it for hours on the stove like a braise, and then she spreads it out and she broils it until it's all crispy. It's kind of amazing.
God, I want that.
It is amazing.
Just for my own selfishness, where in our neighborhood do you order from?
Yeah, I've never seen that anywhere except for I've never seen it anywhere. Okay. Not even like in the Lucknow where she's from. I've only seen it in like a house that she's been in, like my grandmother's or hers.
And say it again, what it's called?
Graille, grail.
Oh.
It would be mom's like cauliflower, this gobi she makes. It's all mom's cooking, really.
Oh wow.
She's a fabulous cook.
Oh my gosh, you made me very hungry.
She's a great cook, yeah.
What is the last meal that you had that made you emotional?
It would be around Thanksgiving when, not dissimilar to when we did a food and wine shoot. My mom cooked everything.
Oh, wow.
Right. It was a Thanksgiving thing that was put together and like food and wine was actually part of it, but my mom cooked everything. And like, I didn't cook anything. You know what I mean? Like, I think I was in there helping a little. And it was my brother's family and his 4 kids. And my mom and dad and Ella and I.
Okay. Are they in Kentucky?
Everyone's in Kentucky. Except for
yeah.
Everyone's a doctor and everyone's in Kentucky.
Yeah. I'm going back to Kentucky in a few months. I don't go back very often. Wasn't a happy place for me.
Oh, yeah?
I always wanted to live in Louisville.
Louisville's cool.
Louisville's very cool.
It's actually a cool place, yeah. Yeah, it is.
What is the last meal that somebody cooked for you in their home?
It would be my friend Tyler.
What'd he cook for you?
He's a great cook. It was really simple, but nothing's ever really that simple with him. It was like, he made nudis and peas and basil oil and all sorts of stuff. But it was like really, he's a good cook. He's a great chef.
Yeah. Okay. So he's a chef. Because I was thinking people don't love cooking for chefs, but chefs will cook for.
Yeah, he was actually my sous chef at La Esquina at first.
Oh wow.
And now he's off doing kind of his own stuff, but
okay.
He's just like a great chef. His wife made blueberry pie, and it's just like really like just good home cooked stuff.
Making a pie for somebody is such an act of love.
It was great. It was delicious. Yeah.
That's really nice, and it's funny. So many people can't answer that question because nobody cooks for them.
It's true. It's true. I'm usually cooking for most people.
Yeah. So, Mr. Bass Player, what living musician who you haven't cooked for do you want to cook for, and what would you make for them?
Living, you said, right?
Yes. Because otherwise...
I mean, I always say Geddy Lee, but...
I forgot. You were like a Rush dude.
Yeah, it was I mean, that would need a whole nother show to talk about, but I've always been a pretty big Rush fan, and particularly bass player. But they were just this dorky band that I think no one really ever got, and I felt like I always got it. So
it's fun. When I was at CNN, we actually had one of my colleagues wrote a story about being that Rush fan, that nerdy Rush fan.
It's true. It's really true, and I always thought like. I get this stuff, like it's a little different, like it's a little awkward. It's really skillfully done and soulful, but I don't know, like Geddy Lee's always been someone I've looked up to.
What would you make him?
He's a really big foodie apparently, and I've actually gotten to cook for him once at Gramercy Tavern.
Whoa!
As like a tasting menu kind of thing, and the waiter brought him back once, and I got to meet him, and I'm glad it was very brief because I was definitely like a nervous dude. But
oh god, we all have those people who you would just lose it in front of.
It's really cool. I mean, he's just a cool dude. What would I make him? He's a big wine guy. I hear that's what the waiter, this guy Jeremiah, who used to work at Gramercy with us, said he was a big wine guy. So I would probably do something a little more maybe wine centric. Like using kind of some of that interesting stuff, and maybe it turned out to be a little more French. Maybe a Bourguignon kind of thing.
And you jam afterward.
If I could keep up.
No, I'm here to say no one can keep up. So I'm sure
tough.
You're great.
It would be tough to keep up.
Oh my gosh. So last question. You have 5 uninterrupted minutes for self-care. Your phone's somewhere else it's taken care of. What do you do?
It's can it be 2 things?
Yeah, of course.
I have started boxing a little bit, which I've been enjoying. And it's been kind of fun. But typically I will say it's there's a lot of running, which I think, again, I think there's a repetition that helps clear your mind.
Yeah.
There's a good amount of just exercise in general, but there's a good amount of bass playing too.
If you can do all those things at once.
Right. Bass playing, I think, helps clear my mind more than anything.
Yeah.
Because you really get lost into something else. And it's equally creative, and there's endless combinations.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much to our guest today, Akhtar Nawab. How can people find you on social?
Yeah, I have a terrible Instagram at Chef Akhtar, but I try my best.
Okay, and name off all the places, all the restaurants and things that people can come and find.
Yes, we have Alta Calidad in Brooklyn, and we also have Alta Calidad Taqueria in 55 Water Street, and then Otra Vez in New Orleans, and opening soon we're having we're managing 10 places at the Inner Rail in Omaha, Nebraska. And
you will have a book coming out as well.
I have a book called Good For You coming out, hopefully in 6-7 months.
Please follow him everywhere there. Thank you so much to our producer, Jennifer Martinick, to Douglas Wagner for our delightful theme song. And if you like what you heard, those stars, those comments, all those kind of things help us. They help us so much. They help us rise up in the rankings, and they let us keep doing the show. So, let us know if there's a guest you would like to hear from, or, something you would like for us to talk about. You can reach out to me. I'm on Twitter @kittenwithawhip. Thank you so much for listening, and take good care of yourself until the next time.